really excited to introduce our next presenter. We have never had an attorney here before, so this is really going to be an interesting experience. Jeff Rabin is an attorney licensed in Illinois, and he has focused his law practice in the representation of disabled individuals seeking benefits under the Social Security Act. I have to tell you, when he sent me his bio, it was about this long. And as I was weeding through it, I thought, I can't possibly read all of this. I'm just going to kind of look over the high points and figure out what I should put in here. But he has done so much community service and so much volunteer work for our community that I had to include a lot of it. I have an entire page. I have an entire page because so much of it pertains to us. So I really do have a lot to say here. Jeff has been an attorney since 1980. And he founded Jeffrey Rabin and Associates in 1988. In December of 2014, the law firm of Jan Kodner and Associates merged into the practice and became the law offices of Rabin, Kodner, and Brown, along with Jan Kodner and Jim Brown and Associates, Rachel King, James Leaney, and Laura Ellis. I probably got all those names pronounced wrong. They have represented clients nationwide at all levels of the administration process and in federal courts. So although he's licensed in Illinois, they're able to represent people all across the country. So I'm just going to list off a few things here that he has volunteered and people he's represented because there really was too much for me to cover. The National Alliance of Mental Illness, Alliance to End Homelessness, Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Fibromyalgia, and Chemical Sensitivity Coalition of Chicago, Northern Illinois Multiple Sclerosis Society Professional Advisory Committee, 2000 Secretary of Health and Human Services, Donna Shalala, appointed Mr. Rabin as member of the department's Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Coordinating Committee, the Executive Council of the American Trial Lawyers Association on Social Security Disability Committee, sustaining member of the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives. May 2013, Mr. Rabin received Volunteer Advocate of the Year Award from the Lupus Foundation of Illinois. A frequent speaker on Social Security issues, Mr. Rabin has lectured nationwide to various community, legal, insurance, and government agencies. He has testified before Congress on Social Security issues and was featured in a 60 Minutes story on this area of the law. He also had articles published in a variety of publications. Mr. Rabin has spoken to groups sponsored by the Lupus Foundation, American Cancer Society, the Multiple Sclerosis Society, Gilda's Club, the Arthritis Foundation, the National Kidney Foundation, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and many others. As you can see, he is extremely qualified to be here with all of us today. I know it was a lot to say, but how could I not include all of that? So it is my honor to welcome our partner sponsor, Mr. Jeff Rabin.
So my name is Jeff Rabin, and I'm an attorney, and all I do in my law practice is help people who are disabled and are trying to get benefits from the Social Security Administration. As Gracie said, I became a lawyer in 1980, and I started out with a small general practice firm downtown where I got stuck with the Social Security work because nobody else in that practice wanted to deal with this clientele or with the bureaucracy. As time went on, I found I liked the clientele and I liked the bureaucracy a whole lot more than I like other lawyers. And the nice thing about my work is I don't have to deal with other lawyers. It's me, my client, the judge, off we go. So I did my first disability case in 1981. My third disability case in 1981 was a reflex sympathetic dystrophy case when nobody knew anything about it. Some of the doctors were still calling it causalgia. I got interested, and that's the case that really motivated me to go on and learn more about this practice. And as Gracie said, we set up our own firm in 1988 just to do this. My normal Social Security talk takes about 90 minutes, and I don't have anywhere near that much time today. So we're going to skip around in the handout. there's a PowerPoint that's much more detailed, and if you want it, come by the booth, give me your email address, and we can email the entire PowerPoint to you so you can have it as a reference. But we're going to start, let's start by first talking about what it means to be totally disabled. We're going to approach this area of law way differently than any of you have ever talked to a representative or talked to anybody on the street about it. One of the things we're going to do is we're talking about it accurately, which not everybody does. In order for me to get somebody disability benefits, I've got to prove the existence of medically determinable impairment presenting some severe precludes the ability to perform any substantial gainful activity for a period of this lasted expected at least 12 months or result in death. See, this guy was going to write that down. Okay. This is what the law says. Well, that's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. Let's talk about what it really means. For me to get somebody's benefits approved, I have to be able to prove that they are suffering from symptoms which so impact their ability to function that they could not do any type of work available in the national economy on a sustained basis. Now, I said that very carefully. I did not say that I have to prove a label or a diagnosis. Social Security is not about diagnoses. People with CRPS work. People with cancer work, people with AIDS work, people with multiple sclerosis work. Social Security is not about diagnosis. Social Security focuses on the symptoms from that diagnosis and on the evidence as to how those symptoms impact your ability to sustain function in a work setting. I get calls all day from people who say, Mr. Rabin, I have sugar diabetes and high blood pressure and I want to get disability. And my response is, so what? Take your medicine, watch your diet, and go to work. I mean, those can be serious conditions, but generally they're important medical conditions that need to be treated, but they don't create symptoms that impact work function. So when somebody calls me up and they say they have a physical medical problem, a bad heart, bad lungs, a bad back, my question is, what are the symptoms from that physical medical problem, and how do those symptoms impact your ability to do the physical motions in a job? Sitting in a chair, standing, oh, I can't move, walking, lifting, reaching, pushing, pulling. Those physical motions that are involved in every single job, how are they impacted by the symptoms from whatever the diagnosis is? If somebody calls me up and they have a mental impairment, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, PTSD, agoraphobia, our most common call is bipolar disease, what are the symptoms from that mental impairment, and what does the evidence reflect as to how those symptoms impact the ability to do the basic mental motions of work, understanding and remembering simple instructions, performing 1- and 2-step tasks, interacting appropriately with supervisors and coworkers. How do those symptoms, from whatever label the psychiatrist put on this person, impact their ability to do that those basic mental activities that are involved in every single job? See, Social Security rarely denies the diagnosis. They're not denying you have CRPS if the doctors say you have CRPS. We're way past that in Social Security law. What they say is, so what? What are the symptoms from that diagnosis, and how do those symptoms impact your ability to function in a work setting? And they call it, in their lingo, your residual functional capacity to perform work-related activities, RFC, and that's an important phrase in this law. And Social Security has doctors in every state. In Illinois, they're down in Springfield, who create this RFC, what they think this person can do, for every single person that applies. And then, they relate that RFC to the mythical world of work. And this is where my program and your frustrations go like this. It does not matter in this law whether you could get another job. I talked with a delightful woman here today who had been an emergency room nurse for years and said she can't go back to that. That is not the issue. It doesn't matter whether you could do your old work, find a job, travel to a job, whether you'd be hired for the job because you're in a wheelchair. None of that is going to be considered under the disability law, especially for people under 50. At 50, if you don't have a GED, a little bit. At 55, a little bit more. But generally, those real-world problems are not a factor in a disability case. The only factor in a disability case is, can I prove you cannot function at a job on a sustained basis? So let's take an example. Let's try a 48-year-old Chicago carpenter. He's a union member. It's been a little while since I've checked the union rates, but last time I did it was about $41 an hour, plus benefits. He's climbing the scaffold falls and lands on his back. He herniates 2 discs in his low back from the fall. He's never going to be a $41 an hour carpenter again, because with that back fusion, he's not going to be able to saw and throw 2x4s over his shoulder and climb with one hand. That's not the test. Social Security is a total disability program. So the issue in his case is, could he still function as a ticket taker at a movie theater? It's a sit-stand option job. He wears a little blue coat. He rips the tickets in half. And I don't even know what a current movie is right now. But George Clooney movies in door number 2, enjoy the show. Ticket taker at a movie theater, coin changer at a self-service gas station, shoebox packer in a shoe store, washing machine unloader in a laundromat. These are the kinds of jobs that Social Security has used to deny my clients benefits in the past. A number of years ago, I was representing a cardiac intensive care nurse here in Chicago. She worked downtown and zapping people like you see on TV and saving lives. She developed rheumatoid arthritis, and this was before the biologics, and she ended up with 2 claw hands. Social Security denied her application, saying that she had the RFC, remember that phrase, residual functional capacity, to be a bicycle rental clerk. Back when you could help substance abusers, and Gracie mentioned to you that I was on 60 Minutes, I was actually featured as the evil lawyer because I believe that even people with substance abuse problems deserved help. Leslie Stahl didn't, so she featured me as the evil lawyer helping substance abusers. And she won and I lost, and we can't help substance abusers anymore, and we can talk about that down the road if you want. But I was representing a fellow who was in the Gateway program, which at that time was a year-long drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. And they denied Henry's case, saying that he retained the RFC to be a bank vault security guard. Now, when I told Henry the heroin addict they wanted him to guard the bank vaults, he said, "Mr. Rabin, I wish how I wish." The point of the stories is, my lady wasn't going to go rent dillies in Lincoln Park, and Henry would never be hired as a bank vault security guard. But that's not the test. The test is whether I could prove they could not function at those jobs. If I did, I won. If I didn't, I lost. If you want to write that desk actually looks like mine, and my new secretary, Charlene, is not sure what she just got into when she saw that. But if you want to write down one word summarizes everything we've talked about so far this morning. And that word is the word do. D-O. Every disability case boils down to the evidence as to what you can do despite whatever your medical problem is. CRPS, failed back syndrome, breathing problems, congestive heart failure. It doesn't matter the label. The issue is, what can you do on a sustained basis despite that medical problem? Now, this basic law, proving the inability to function for at least a year because of your medical-based symptoms, relates to 2 different programs, and we're going to hit the highlights on these 2 programs. A lot of questions at my table today about this, so we're going to spend a minute to do this. The first program is called Title II of the Social Security Act. Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, Workers' Disability. We're going to call it SSDI this morning. The second program, and I'm going to come back to this, is called Supplemental Security Income, or Title 16, or SSI. We're going to call that one SSI. So we have SSDI, we have SSI. Let's first talk about SSDI because it's the more comprehensive of the two programs. SSDI has two requirements. First is the medical test. That's what we just discussed before these ladies came in late and they don't get to hear it. The second is you must have bought the insurance. Social Security disability insurance. This is an insurance plan, and it is no different than your homeowner's insurance, your car insurance, your life insurance. Now he's saying, I know I send my check in once a year to Prudential for my life insurance, and he says, I know I send Allstate for my car, and she knows her homeowner's is in her mortgage. They don't remember ever writing out a check to Social Security. But every one of you all has, because I'm looking around the room. Everyone in this room is old enough to have had a job. And if you're like my staff, they say the deal they made with the boss is that for not enough money, they work too many hours and under too much stress. But that's the typical boss-employee thing. The problem is, not one of you has ever gotten a paycheck for what the boss promised, ever. Why? Because every time you've gotten paid, that check has a stub. Now, the top line on that stub says federal withholding. And I'm going to be careful because this is a mixed audience. When I'm in DuPage County, I say this one way. When I'm in Cook County, I say it another way. But federal withholding, that's the money that goes out to Washington, D.C., and it pays for the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Smithsonian Institute, and it pays for our president to hold press conferences at his country club. Then you've got the bottom line on your check stub. That says state withholding. That's the money that goes down to Springfield, and for those of you that live in Illinois, truly only the Lord knows what happens to that money now when it gets down there. And we know some of it goes for roads and bridges. We know some of it has gone to build big prisons that sit empty for $100 million in the center of our state. And we know that not enough of it goes to either Medicaid or public education, which are two other issues and interests of mine. And then, you've got the lines in the middle for the money that goes over the rainbow to the land of FICAville. Now, some of us in this room remember when our checks actually said FICA. There's some of you in this room who have no idea what I'm talking about because now it's like her right there. It's divided up into two lines. And one line says OASDI, Old Age Survivor and Disability Insurance, and the other says Medicare. But those are your FICA payments, and they're matched by the boss. Every dollar taken out of your paycheck for FICA, the boss reaches in her purse and she matches that. And the money goes off to Washington, D.C., and it goes into 3 trust funds. What's your name? Next to you. Juan. I should have remembered from when we talked. Juan doesn't have any money at Social Security. None of us do. We don't have accounts. We don't have money to draw on. We're not getting interest. Our money's not getting invested for us. We don't have a stash at Social Security. Instead, the money that's taken out of Juan's check and his boss's goes into 3 trust funds. The big trust fund that eats up almost all the money is called Social Security Retirement. Then there's a little one off to the side, and little is in the billions, and that's called Social Security Disability. And then there's another little one off on the other side, again in the billions, and that's called Medicare. And that's how these programs are funded. Juan and the boss send in the money out of their paycheck. It immediately gets paid out. So your parents and grandparents and family members who are getting Social Security retirement or getting survivors benefits or getting disability benefits are getting the money that Juan sent in last week with his paycheck. So make sure you get his address so that every month they can send him a thank you note. In the trust funds, whatever is left over at the end of the month that isn't paid out to current beneficiaries is loaned to the U.S. Treasury so that they can lie to us about the size of the actual federal debt. Because if they took the federal debt plus what they owe the trust funds, nobody would ever have any faith in the U.S. economy anymore. But that's how these programs work. Juan pays in, money goes out, balance loan to the Treasury. Two-part FICA test, and this is where we've had a lot of questions today. Two-part FICA test to qualify for disability. One, you must have worked and paid FICA taxes for 40 quarters in your lifetime, 10 years. Two, you must have worked and paid FICA taxes for 20 quarters of the 40 quarters preceding the onset of disability. Let's take an example to explain that. So you're going to learn a lot about me today, whether you're going to hear me speak or you're going to come to the booth. Sherry, my wife, and I, my wife is here as our paralegal. We're pretty open books. One of the things about me is I'm the world's biggest klutz. Gracie made me dress up in the lawyer's costume today. I hate dressing up in the lawyer's costume. I'm rarely dressed up. But part of the problem with the lawyer's costume is I had to wear shoes that have ties on them. I go out in the parking lot to go put the stuff away in my car, and I trip and I fall and I bang my head on my shoelace. And Gracie gets worried and she sends me over to Glenbrook Hospital, and they do an MRI of my head and they say, oh my God, he's more brain damaged than when he got to the Midwest Expo. And now I'm totally disabled. I live up north in Lake County, so I would go to the Waukegan Social Security office and say, because Gracie made me get dressed, I'm disabled. They'll contact the IRS computer and they're going to ask, has Jeff paid into the Social Security system? Has Jeff paid FICA taxes for at least 40 quarters? And actually I've paid more than 40 years, so I'm way past that. Then they're going to say, pull Jeff's earnings records from 2006 to 2016, the 10 years prior to the date I became totally disabled, and if I worked and paid FICA taxes for at least 20 quarters during that time period. If I've only worked 18 quarters, or 3 years, or I worked for cash and never paid the man a dime, I'll have screwed myself because I wouldn't have purchased the insurance. So this is an insurance plan, same as your own private insurance for your car, home, and life. If I'm totally disabled and I paid into the system for enough quarters, I'm eligible for a monthly check. The amount of that check is a computer formula based upon my age, my earnings, and how much I paid in FICA taxes. It's a really long formula. The average person supporting her family on SSDI is getting about $1,190 a month. So a lot of the hoo-ha and nonsense you hear on the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and from certain members of our Congress about how people are living such high lives because of the supposed fraud on the disability program are a lot of nonsense. They're factually incorrect, they're legally incorrect, and they're morally incorrect, and I'm happy to discuss that in detail anytime. In addition to my monthly benefit, my kids who are under 16 or who are under 18 and are still in high school will get a monthly check until they graduate high school or turn 19. I become eligible for Medicare, the federal red, white, and blue card, 29 months from the date I become totally disabled. Let me explain that because that also is said different ways on the street. So I became disabled today because Gracie made me get dressed, and this is August 2017. On the SSDI program, and that's the only one we're talking about now, they have a 5-month, what they call elimination period. We call it a starvation period. They want you to be sufficiently hungry before you get help. So I will not get a check for September, October, November, December, January. My first check will be February 2018. Medicare begins February 2020. 2 years, 5 months from the date I became totally disabled. 2 exceptions to that rule, and this is going to lead me into another topic that I'm not going to belabor. 2 exceptions. 1, if you're on kidney dialysis. 2, if you have Lou Gehrig's disease. The one reason for those 2 exceptions, better lobbyists than you all have. One of the things that's important today, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's an important thing that maybe Gracie and everybody can address going forward. You all must advocate better for yourselves. Pick up the phone, email your congressman, especially now, because all this stuff about opiates and all this is going to backlash and only hurt people with chronic pain who need medications. And the only thing that's going to happen is things are going to be harder to get, treatment's going to be harder to get. The changes they're talking about to the Medicaid system are going to devastate people with chronic pain problems. You must speak up. Nobody is going to do it for you. You must speak up. And we can talk more about that later, my ideas on how to do that. All right, those are the highlights of the SSDI program. Let's talk about SSI. It is nice to be in a room where there are some people who do remember Look in Life magazines. A lot of times when I do this talk, it's to a whole room full of case managers and social workers who are all recently out of school, and I say Look in Life magazine, and they don't have a clue what I'm talking about. But you remember. Look in Life magazines, for those youngsters, were wonderful magazines in the 60s and 70s, and I think they're still published today, but they told stories in photographs, big, glossy magazines, beautiful photographs. In 1971, they did a series of pictorial articles on the difference in living conditions between the elderly poor in the north, who are getting some help from their townships and cities and local communities, and the elderly poor in the south, who weren't, and were living in shanties and lean-tos and literally eating out of cat food tins. Congress thought that was a bad thing, so they enacted SSI to help the elderly poor, and then expanded it to help the disabled poor. So SSI has two requirements. Number one, the exact same medical test. Now these ladies sitting down right now in the middle, you'll all stare at them, they missed that, so now they missed that discussion. You guys are off the hook for a minute. And second, you must be indigent. Indigent for SSI purposes means no money coming into the household other than possibly TANF benefits or child support, and less than $2,000 in non-excludable resources. Non-excludable resources, what do we mean? They don't value your clothes. You're allowed a house if you're living in it. You don't have to be homeless. You're allowed one car because you have to go to the doctor and the pharmacist. But they will look in your wallet. They will look in your purse. They will look for checking accounts, savings accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 203Bs, cash value life insurance, investment properties, any asset that can be converted to cash, even if you have to pay a tax and a penalty to access it, counts against the $2,000 limitation. So this is a program for people who are permanently and totally disabled and in very, very limited, dire financial straits. If you meet those two requirements and you're living independently, you will get $735 a month to live on, plus food stamps and a Medicaid card. Now, again, you talk to Congress people from a certain philosophical bent, and they're going to talk, oh, this terrible SSI program. It's a program that leaves a single totally disabled individual 25% below the poverty level in the United States of America. So it's not a program that pays a great deal of money. There's an issue, though, with the SSI program, and this is another question that's come up a couple times. I wasn't going to address it now, but it's come up this morning, so I want to talk about it briefly. And that problem is a theory in the law called deeming. Deeming says, what belongs to Sherry belongs to me, what belongs to me belongs to Sherry, and what belongs to the two of us belongs to our minor children. We don't have minor children anymore, but thank goodness. Here's the problem. So realize, my main office is in Des Plaines. We have 7 offices around northern Illinois where we see people. But 36 years I've been doing disability work. This fact situation, I'm going to give you the abbreviated version, probably comes up in my office 5 times a month. So if it's one guy in one office in Des Plaines 5 times a month for 36 years, Spread this out across the nation and you see how bad this problem is. Woman goes to school, she does well, she marries. This guy's rocking it, making money hand over fist. He's doing great. It's the 90s and everybody's making money. They have 3 girls. She says, I'm blessed. I'm going to choose to be a stay-at-home mom. Why not? I'm fortunate. I can do this. I want to do this. Fast forward into the 2010s. The oldest girl's 24. She's out of school. The younger, middle one is 22 or 21. She's a high school, college senior. The baby's 19. She's a college freshman. And husband, not rocking it anymore. He's now working for this small, tiny consulting firm in IT in Oak Brook, and they don't offer family health insurance because it costs too much. And yeah, they're supposed to under the Affordable Care Act, but they've got 3 kids in college, so they didn't buy health insurance for mom. Mom is 48 years old, and she's hit by a car. Or she develops fibromyalgia. Or she's diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Let's use multiple sclerosis. She comes to me and she says, Jeff, I want you to get me SSDI to help pay some of the bills and Medicare because I want to treat at Rush because they have the most sophisticated MS clinic there. So get me SSDI and a Medicare card. And I have to say no. Why? She hasn't worked 5 out of the last 10 years because she's been a stay-at-home mom. And then she says, well, at least get me SSI and Medicaid because the Medicaid pays for Avonex, and that's the initial drug that lets me save my legs so I don't end up in a scooter. And I have to tell her, no, I can't get her SSI and Medicaid. How come? Husband's assets and income are deemed to her. But that's part 1 of the story. Part 2 is he looks at her and he says, you're sick, and you're not fun anymore. And he's out the door. Sadly, a huge percentage of my clients end up divorced because of the emotional and financial stress put on by their disabilities. Well, she gets a good lawyer because he's been working for a long time and he's got $250,000 in IRAs and profit-sharing money, and she gets half of that. If she hired my ex-wife's lawyer, she'd have gotten more than half, but that's a different problem, whatever. She gets half of it. I can't get her SSI because that $125,000 for her future is an asset. The rule in the United States of America is stay-at-home moms get screwed. There's no, for all the family value talk we talk in the United States and in the government, there's no value put on stay-at-home parenting, which causes this hardship to many, many people. We help where we can. The Affordable Care Act has been a huge help by at least allowing our people access to the health insurance system, but who knows what's going to happen to that in the upcoming months. Got it. Thank you, that helps me a lot. So, SSDI, SSI, those are the 2 main programs. We're going to skip ahead. This is the most important slide in the whole handout. This is where you get your money from coming here and sitting in this room with me today. There's a lot of pressure, and you hear me talking politics in Congress a lot because that is the reality of our world today. There's a lot of pressure coming on Congress to deny more cases. Congress controls the purse strings. They've underfunded Social Security's operating budget 5 out of the last 6 years. Judges are now denying cases at a rate we haven't seen since 1979. But we can win cases, and it's really important that we win cases. And it's important that we win cases for 2 reasons. Number 1, we believe our clients need the help. We're very restrictive in our office on the cases we take. We turn away about 70% of the people that call us. So if we take a case, that's somebody we believe in, and that's a case we want to see won because we believe the client needs the help. The second reason, to be perfectly frank, is it's the only way I get paid. Nobody pays me money up front. Nobody gets an hourly billing. I don't charge anybody anything. I only get paid if I win. So we must win cases. 3 rules. Number 1 rule, you must be going to the doctor. You must be going to the doctor. You must be going to the doctor. I can't say it enough. It is the key. I tell every new client when we meet that what you say is not evidence. What's your name? Jenna. What Jenna says can never be evidence to win her case because she wants the money. What her husband, neighbor, partner, child, mother says, that's not evidence that can win the case because they like her. None of what they say can ever win a case. Jenna can only hurt the case. The only thing that's evidence to support a case are the clinical charts of the treating specialist. You must be going to the doctor. People say, well, my insurance is so bad and I can't go and there's a wait and the county people are so mean to me, and the judge says, you have evidence, you don't have evidence. You don't have evidence, you lose. Excuses, not interested. This is a yes or a no program. Second rule, there's a right way and a wrong way to go to the doctor. Okay, I'm going to pick on you. What's your name? Nope, behind you. You're not you, and you'll hear why in a minute. Yes. Pardon me? Brianna. So I told you all you'd learn a lot about me. My brothers and I were lucky. We had incredible parents. They were great people. They've both been gone for many, many, many years. But there isn't a day that doesn't go by that I'm not grateful. My dad was a roofer. He had a small roofing business, and I learned so much from my dad. Now, one of the things about my dad is he'd be up on the roof, and he'd be using the hatchet with the guys and chopping off the old roof to get the new one on. Remember I told you about that klutziness? Well, I got that from him, so he'd hit his arm with the hatchet. But the job had to get done. So he'd spit on it, he'd put a glob of hot tar, and he'd finish the job, and my mom would see him that night and say, "Oi, Bobby, you did it again." But that was my dad. He never complained. Never complained, no matter what life tossed him, my dad fought on. The second thing about my dad is he was the world's biggest flirt. He flirted all the time, and I kind of learned that from him. Now, my present wife, she's kind of okay with it. My first wife wasn't so okay with it. It was another set of issues, but that's all right. Brianna, she's my psychiatrist, and she's been treating me for a while. Are you really a psychiatrist? Oh, okay. I actually did that once, and the woman was a psychiatrist. She's been treating me for a long time. And today's my appointment with Dr. Brianna. Now, some of you all can't see Brianna. She has a great smile. And she's trying really hard not to use it now because she's getting embarrassed. But she has a really pretty smile. So today's my day to go see Doc Brianna. So what do I do today? The same thing you all do. Today's the day I take a shower. And I shave, and I pat down what's left to be patted down, and I put on my clean shirt, and I walk into Dr. Brianna's office, and she says, "Hey, Jeff, how are you today?" And I answer her the same way you all do. I say, "I'm okay, Doc, how are you?" You all do it. And what does she chart? Well-groomed, nice man says he's okay. And I just lost my disability case. Next month I come in. The shirt's wrinkled, my eyes are red, I have this thing that they call this flat affect. I think of an iron for some reason, but I think it means I look sad. And I walk in and she says, "Jeff, any new symptoms? Maybe we need to talk about adjusting your medications." Well, the worst thing somebody with mental illness wants to hear is adjust their medications. Been on all these medications. "Oh, no, Doc, there's no new symptoms. Just been a bad week. The dog pooped on the carpeting and the car had this thing on it, so I couldn't move the wheel. It was really a bad, there's no new symptoms." What does she chart? Jeff says no new symptoms. Next month, I'm a mess. Clothes are a mess. I walk in, she has to reach under her desk for that Febreze bottle that we keep in our office too for some of those clients. She says, "Jeff, I'm really worried. Are you sure things are stable? Maybe we need to talk about that day hospital program over at Glenbrook." What do I hear? Hospital. Done the mental health hospitals. Not interested in psychiatric wards. No, "Oh no, Doc Brianna, don't be silly. Everything's fine, it's stable. It was just a really bad week again. I had to go to school for the report card for the kid, and the sheriff showed up, something about child support. I don't even remember her, but really everything is stable." What does she chart? Jeff says things are stable. Here's what happens. When I don't fully and painfully communicate with my doctors two bad results. Number one, she's not a mind reader, and she's not following me around. Gracie put it perfectly. I don't know who of you heard her this morning, but she talked about a costume. Don't put on a costume when you go to the doctor. She's not going to give me the best medical care because she's not seeing and hearing the truth, and the charts are going to be inaccurate. I tell my clients, my female clients, go to the doctor like it was Thursday at 6 o'clock. You felt lousy all day. It's storming and lightning outside, and your husband's 2 hours late coming home to help with the kids. That's how you go to the doctor, because that's the truth. Putting on, and Gracie, you let this self open for this morning, but putting on Gracie's costume is perfect for today. And it's perfect for her husband and her family. It's wrong when you go to the doctor, because Brianna, if she doesn't hear and see the truth, she's not going to be able to give you best medical care, and she's not going to chart accurately. It's the most important thing you can do. Third rule, Social Security wants specialists. You got CPRS, it's a pain doctor, a neurologist, or an orthopedic. It's not a family doctor giving you Norco. You got depression and anxiety, and almost everybody with long-term chronic illness, no, not almost everybody, but many people do. It's a psychiatrist with a therapist. You got a bad back, it's an orthopedic. You got a bad heart, it's a cardiologist. Family doctors have very little room in the Social Security disability program. We really have to push for specialists. And if your HMO or your PPO or your Medicaid card isn't allowing that, you got to fight and fight and fight and yell and yell and yell until you get to the right doctors, because that's evidence in a disability case. The notes of the internist are not. I want to switch gears again because of questions from this morning. Oh no, let's stay here. Here's the problem with chronic pain cases. You've heard me use the phrase evidence and proof. Social Security wants, I'm good, that's great. I got to bring you to every talk I give. She's giving me cards here on my time. Social Security wants science. So their perfect case is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a lung case, because they can do a CT scan and see the scars and the marks in the lungs. The doctor can hear the gurgling and the fluid, and then they measure it with a pulmonary function test, and it's all science. I can't prove pain. There's no scientific test that proves pain. I can't measure pain. Do you have 2 degrees of pain or 6 degrees of pain? I know nobody in this room right now has Social Security's definition of 10 degrees of pain, because you're not in the emergency room right now on a morphine drip. How do we know how much pain you have? I can't prove fatigue. And oftentimes we prove our pain cases more on fatigue than we do pain. I can't measure fatigue. The key is that communication with the doctors. Every visit, every doctor, every symptom. It has to be in those charts. The way we prove whether you can function or not, to me, the most effective theory in the law is whether you can sustain work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's the theory. Judges like to go, can you lift 10 pounds? Can you lift 20 pounds? I don't want to fight. This guy here looks like he could lift 50 pounds without a problem. I don't want to get in that fight. I want to fight with, can you function 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, day after day after day, without those symptoms going from a 3 or a 4 to a 6 or a 7 and knocking you out for a couple of days. How do we do that without science? We do it with your repeated, over and over again, consistent visits and descriptions to the doctor of what your day-to-day life is. Diagnosis is not the key. Documentation of the symptoms and how those symptoms impact your life is the key. On our table, you'll see we pass out calendars to all of our new clients with big boxes. So every day you can write down what your symptoms were that day, so that when you go to the doctor, you can accurately relate. Because if you go a month or two between visits, you never remember what happened. I can't tell you what happened yesterday if my wife doesn't tell me. The calendar is your memory prompt so that those notes are accurate. There's a lot more to talk about, but I'm going to run out of time. I want to do this. Some of you have come up to me and said, I'm on disability. I'm sorry you're on disability, but I'm glad your case was approved. Congress was given by Social Security was given by Congress $3 billion to do nothing but check on people. Everybody is going to get reviewed. So here's what happens. What's your name right there? Yep. Leo, my grandson's name. Leo, y'all don't know, but I know Leo. He's a real stubborn SOB. And when we were representing him, we had to yell at him, go to the doctor, go to the doctor, go to the doctor. He went to the doctor. We won his case. He stops. He stops because I'm not nudging him. He stops because the doctor says, I can't help you. Whatever the reason is, he stops. A year later, he gets a call from a state adjudicator saying, hey, Leo, we're doing a continuing disability review, and the issue is there medical improvement sufficient to allow you to return to work? And we start with, who's your doctor? Because we're going to go read his notes. Because remember, the charts are the evidence. Leo says, well, I haven't been to the doctor in a year because Jeff isn't nudging me. And a big smile comes on his face because he says, no troubles, buddy, I'll send you to one of ours. I don't know if any of you ever had a Social Security consultative exam. I actually got to sit in on one. It's get on the table, get off the table, walk heel to toe, how many fingers am I holding up, and what's the difference between an apple and an orange? You can't tell pain. You can't measure pain. You can't tell fatigue. You can't measure fatigue. You can't tell if somebody has CRPS in a 10-minute get on the table, get off the table exam, and he's going to get terminated. So for all of you who are on disability, the rule is you must be going to the doctors. These are medical cases. This is a medical program. Our work is gathering medical evidence and arguing it. So even if you're on disability, you must continue going to the doctors. There's a lot more I can send you all. For those of you who work in clinics or programs or doctors or social workers, we send out a professional newsletter. I have some samples on my table. If you want to get on our newsletter list, just give me a business card. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have excellent attorneys. I have the best paralegal crew of anybody in the country. I'll put my team up against anybody's. We're always willing to answer questions. We don't charge to answer questions. We'll do anything we can to support you all and Gracie's work. We have business cards at the table. If you want the handout, there's my personal email address. You may not talk to me. It may be one of our other people, but we're always willing to answer questions and try to help out. Enjoy the rest of the day. Please learn. Please network. Please ask questions. And please go to your doctors. Thank you, everybody.